If you had a magic wand, what would you want out of the model that's missing today?
Yeah, the first one is the speech-to-speech being better. It's not that we're not. It's just like, it's still early days for those models. I mean, they're in beta for a reason. They go down quite frequently for anyone who's used them. They're just not ready for prime time yet. And the cost.
Part of it is just the reliability of those models.
Yeah, so the reliability of those and the cost to come down so that it actually becomes a viable option for many of the use cases that we have. That would be number one. And the promise of those models, which is not there yet, is that not only is it lower latent, but you should be able to detect emotion, right? Like AI agents are good and they can kind of say the right things, and like for words that are super obvious, they know the emotion and how to react. But as you know, like they can't mirror everything we're saying and exactly the like emotion that I'm emoting at any given moment. And throughout a call, it can change. They can't laugh if you're trying to make a joke. So I think those are some of the things from a qualitative experience that would be killer for our specific use cases if they could do those kinds of things.
There's other sort of use cases that are important right now. If you go text to text, if there's two customers on the phone, let's say in healthcare, it's a mother and a child talking, the AI just gets text. It doesn't know that it's two different people, so there's no way for it to distinguish. Even in the voice-to-voice models, it still doesn't, do the work to distinguish this or who they are. But that's where this is going, where you can have multiple people in a conversation. That's important not just for that use case, but also for live transfers. And then I think on latency, we're probably around sub 800 milliseconds. Maybe with the voice-to-voice, we're a little bit faster. You really need to be sub 500 milliseconds to make it feel like human. All of those things are going to improve the quality of the experience.
Alex and Rebecca, it's so good to have the two of you here. I met you both in the really early days of Regal, and I remember being struck by how you two have such a high trust relationship and finish each other's sentences. I don't think I spend as much time with anyone as you spend with each other. So you worked together at Handy, which was acquired by Angie, which is transforming the home services industry. And Alex was the SVP of growth there, Rebecca, the chief product officer. Today, you're co-founders of Regal, and you both also invest in founders together out of a small fund. So at what point in time did you look each other and say, I think I can spend a lot of time with this person and start a company with them?
It wasn't the first time for me, Alex.
Yeah, definitely not. And when we started, Rebecca and I were on opposite coasts. So we were hired by the CEO of...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we were hired by the CEO of Handy. I was the New York GM. And somehow got swindled into also running the contact center team. And Rebecca was the SF GM. And so we didn't see each other very much really. And then at some point, Rebecca realized the East Coast is the best coast and moved back. I don't know why, but moved back. And so that's when we started spending more time. But people always assume, one, we have the same skill set because we kind of have similar backgrounds, and two, that we spend all this time together. It wasn't. I mean, actually, Rebecca is much more of a sort of product mind than I am. And I think I'm a little bit more go-to-market minded than Rebecca is and commercial minded. And I think it wasn't until we were both maybe on the senior team at Handy, sort of later days, where we started spending more time together. And I think that business had its challenges. And ultimately, Rebecca and I for a long time were very invested in trying to figure out how to make that business better. And that's probably what made us spend the most time together in those days.
That's helpful because I do think that for some co-founders, the division of responsibilities is very obvious. And for some, it's a more iterative discovery. So maybe each of you in your own words, what do you handle at Regal? And what is the scope with Alex? You can go first as the CEO and Rebecca as the CTO.
Yeah, I mean, I think it ended up being very natural for we sometimes talk about it as outside, inside, or sometimes as go-to-market and product and engineering. But, things that make me happy is talking with investors, every day. I love it. Talking with customers and...
Heard it here first. Alex loves it.
Yeah, heard it here first. So, that stuff, I think keeps me in a good mood. And I think some of what keeps Rebecca in a good mood is really working with the engineering teams and working with product and data and building new products. And so that was very natural. And I think it's worked out well in our case. I literally don't know how... founding teams or founding CEOs do it when they have to run both sides of the org. Rebecca can talk more about what she does, but on my side, I'm responsible for certain things and I know that Rebecca is doing the other side and I don't need to think about it. And that's very rare, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think when there's someone you trust to handle that side of the business, it's powerful and lets you focus.
Yeah. I think people are sometimes surprised that we're literally 50-50 down the middle, not just like in equity, but in decision rights. So like if we disagree and there are points of friction, which there always are, then like ultimately the person in their areas who's responsible gets the ultimate decision in that, which I think is quite a unique model. But like you said, it's because we have trust and the background in working together. And then the one thing I'd say, as Alex said, the way we split the world is like external stakeholders versus internal stakeholders. But ultimately, I would say customers is like the point of overlap where we're both like very, very involved equally, even though technically it rolls into Alex.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, customers is both sales and it deeply feeds into the product and everything that you do. So it makes sense that would be the overlapping part. So let's actually talk about product. Your initial version and vision, keep me honest, but when we very first met was to build an event-driven telephony and SMS platform. And so it would trigger sales phone calls and text messages based on actions that a customer takes in flows and product actions. So I'd love to hear a little bit about why that was the company that you decided to build, and we'll talk about how the product has progressed and grown since then.
The simple answer is that Alex and I had this pain point at Handy. It's not that it was the company we were born to build, but the company that the 6 years prior, we had all the pain points and all the learnings that led us to build this company. And when we were at Handy and then at Angie, we thought we joined, I'll speak for myself. I thought I joined to bring home services online, make it as easy to buy as it is to buy a product from Amazon. And I literally came from Amazon to Handy to do that. And that was such a worthy mission to try to do because home service is such a messy, large industry that no one has a particularly great experience buying home services. And one of the big lessons we found is that you couldn't digitize the whole experience and create a great, convenient experience for customers. Home services is there's trust friction. There's it's high dollar value. It's high consideration. It's not like buying toilet paper or electronics on Amazon. And so, as hard as we tried as product people and digital marketers to make it as easy as one-click checkout, candidly, that's not what the customer needs to make a really informed decision where they feel good about it and they buy at a high rate. And so the idea for Regal was born out of our experience. We were trying to use all the 5 nines, talk desks, nice and concept. We literally used Genesis. We used almost every one of those products to try to do this thing of proactively identifying who was on our site, reaching decision friction, not converting. How do we reach out to them in the right moment without a random 10-digit number and have a great conversation to get them over that buying hurdle? And we had to do all this manual stuff to get to that outcome, and it still wouldn't scale, and it didn't exactly work, and it wasn't as data-driven or as friendly as we wanted it to be. And as much as we tried with these products and switched products to do it, we couldn't. And so that was the initial conception of Regal. And then we also thought okay, this can't be homes. We did our homework and made sure this wasn't home specifics or home services specific as a problem, but it was really that buyers and consumers were pushing all these high consideration categories like education, healthcare, home services, financial services, insurance online very rapidly. But the e-commerce playbook wasn't sufficient for selling. And so we really thought, how do we go power these event-driven conversations at scale and help businesses and help consumers have better experiences? So that was the conception of Regal.
Really helpful context. So you saw it internally. You said there are a bunch of high consideration businesses. The tools that they have today are not sufficient. Let's go and build that. So you had this idea and you kind of already knew that there was customer validation, or you already knew that there was customer validation. At what point did you feel like you had hit initial innings of product market fit? Like you actually had a product in front of them that they were pulling and wanted more of?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's early days. It was, very much the sort of go-go days of like startups, and a lot of people were spending money to like boost growth. And so there were a lot of people that where they're like, oh, we could use Regal, like drive more growth. Great. So like they're pulling for that. The way I typically describe it is, when you're an early stage founder, you're going to have like 8 or 9 slides or whatever it is of the different things that you do. And one of them, if you're lucky, somebody's going to like pull you across the table and say, that thing, I need it now. And like, if you're lucky enough to have that, like you've got a company, and probably you're going to spend years doing just that one slide, and like unlikely you'll ever get to the other 8 slides you were showing at the beginning, or it'll take years before you get there. So we were lucky, like relatively early, there were some of the things we did where people were like, okay, forget everything else you said, Alex, I don't care, that thing, like, let's do that now. And so I think that was useful. If Rebecca and I have talked about the early days, like part of what's hard is we still had this bigger vision, but customers wanted this one thing. So how much do you focus on the bigger vision and how much do you do one thing that the customer wants? And like, what's the split between that? And is it product market fit just for that one thing or for your full vision? So there's definitely more nuance to it, but look, if you're lucky, you get that feeling. And then, as we started scaling up, we always knew that by being, we were so involved in all the calls and texts and emails, we had all this data that would help us, improve the ways which human agents engage with the customer. But we knew eventually that same data would let us do it with AI agents. And I hate saying this, but to some extent, humans are the hardest part of a contact center, right? Because you have to train them and retrain them and get them to do a thing and they quit and for all the technology you have, if you can't have the agent actually do the thing you want, it's really hard. So there's always this like promise in contact centers of, oh, don't just wait till AI comes along. This is going to be so much easier because now when you have a script or objection handling, like the AI agent will actually do it. So it's been very exciting in the last, really 6 months to see improvement in AI agents because it's the final piece of the puzzle to help companies drive really the level of personalization and customization in every conversation they wanted. Human agents are fine and we're doing a great job, but there are limitations. Like AI agents are not bound by those same limitations. And so I think there'll be a new reorganization where there are still human jobs at the contact center, sure, but that front tier one agent is not going to be a human. It's going to be an AI agent because it provides a better experience with a customer.
There will be more AI that becomes part of this equation. When did you realize that we're ready or in early innings of that? Everyone's talking about generative AI. How did you decide this is going to be a focus for us today in Regal? Because you already have this great product that's getting product market fit in existing call centers.
Yeah. I mean, when was it for you, Rebecca? Maybe January of last year, one of those demos we saw?
Yeah. I mean, once it was playing with ChatGPT, I think that was like every single 6 months we've checked in on like, is AI ready? Is AI ready yet? Should we like invest like deeply in that? And it wasn't until ChatGPT and really some of the layers put on top of ChatGPT to make it, more human and more conversational. That's kind of when we thought like, okay, Gen AI is good enough. And then, yeah, maybe like early last year when we were like, oh, could it be like, with the value chain of getting it to like text to speech, could it be low latency enough and the voice is human enough, like what 11 Labs did, to actually make it be like, I could believe that I would talk to a person or an AI agent contact center.
And not just get frustrated and hang up.
Yeah, when you're like, oh my God, at this point, how many like human contact center conversations have we listened to? Like, I've heard a lot. And so like, it was really easy to know when you're like, other people will be like, pick it apart. Like, oh, it didn't do this, it didn't do that. It's like, trust me, I know what humans are doing right now in the contact center. This is really good.
Well, maybe it'd be helpful to hear, Rebecca, if you could just break down what are the product offerings available in Regal today? And that way we can dive more into the details of how AI is fueling some of them.
Yeah. So we have customers who use the entire Regal platform. Like they rip and replace their entire customer contact center and use us for everything. And then we have, or CCaaS, and then we have people who like buy parts of the Regal platform. So those parts that I would highlight, like, so one is our AI agents, which are phone and SMS agents. Two is we have what we call kind of the event signaling that you were talking about. Like we create these unified profiles from them, and we have a journey builder product, which is what does all that orchestration of like based on their events and their behavior signals, who should we reach out to when across all the different channels. We have a similar or equivalent product on inbound, like exactly how, and some people historically have called this an IVR, ours works a lot differently, but based on who's contacting in and all the profile information we know about them, what's the best way to route them to the best agent? So that's a third product. And then we have kind of like reputation management products as well, like branding and spam and all of that. And we have reporting, right? So A/B testing, reporting suite. Those are kind of our core products. Did I miss any, Alex?
No, I mean, I think really what's happening now is some customers are still, the majority of our sales are a customer replacing their 5.9 nice Genesis with Regal, and it's a full CCaaS rip and replace. 10% of our business now, let's say, is people coming to us looking for AI agents. And what's nice there is we say, don't worry, don't even worry about your current CCaaS platform. You can operate your AI agents in Regal. We have the full operating system that are needed. And as that becomes more and more of your business, and the majority of your interactions are done by AI, you can put some of your humans in Regal because we have all those capabilities. And then in the same queue, you'll have humans and AI. And people sort of like that because they don't need to rip and replace to get started. So I'd say by the end of 2025, my guess is the proportions will have flipped. Like 90% of the deals will start AI agent and 10% will be like just rip and replace CCaaS because it's just happening so fast that, why would you even care what Five9 nice, like who? Because those systems were only built off of the idea of having human agents. When you're in this, what we call omni agent world, where it's a combination of human agents and AI agents, you need a platform that was built for that and that has all the data for that and the tools to monitor and know what's going on with AI agents in a way that the old platforms never were capable.
Got it. I mean, I've seen a spectrum when it comes to customer experience that at least that people talk about. So everything from I'm a human and then I now want AI. We'll get into voice, which is a little bit more complex, but I'm a human and I'm writing some message or response and AI is helping me write it, to what people talk about, which is fully autonomous AI working and sending messages or responding to support. And then there's a really wide spectrum in between where it could look like, hey, there's high uncertainty, so I'm going to route to a human. Or maybe there's a part of the business there that can be automatically handled, but there's a part that is more complex and cannot. And so I'm just curious what you're seeing from customers right now across that spectrum of full autonomy to more humans. It sounds like some of it is full human, no AI. So we'll ignore that for a second, but across the spectrum.
Yeah, look, most of the teams are now still full human and they're still implementing these sort of AI assist things you're talking about. And when we started Regal, I was convinced the world was going to be like AI assist. And just like I've been positively like shocked at the advances in AI, where let's be like really clear, like anybody building AI assist for like human agents will go to their business will go to zero in the next 10 years. Like it is gone. Like there is no business that will be done with like human agents and AI assist. Like it will all be AI agents plus managers who are human and P&L owners who are human and prompt engineers who are human and coaches are like they'll be humans, but they won't be doing the tier one thing. And so, I think particularly within that, I also believe personally that it's going to be more voice than text because text was a function of companies trying to push you to text because it was a cheaper channel for them. Humans talk faster than they type. They emote better over voice. There's a reason Siri and Alexa are voice and not text. So I think what you're going to see is now that not only are AI agents cheaper than human agents for voice, they're actually cheaper than text-based AI agents. Voice is going to become the dominant channel again. You're going to see companies putting phone numbers again, having AI agents in their app, and you're just going to open it and start talking to somebody. And they're going to be always available. They're going to be omniscient. They're going to speak every language. They're always going to be pleasant and happy to talk to you. Never like the sass, like never the excuse me, we care about your call, but we're going to put you on hold. Like that's gone, right? You ask for a call, they're going to instantly call you. And so the positive benefits of AI are going to far outweigh the challenges in the short term. And so I think you're going to see a world very quickly where it's more voice, more AI, and the companies that are best at this will do it in 3 years. Companies that are worse will do in 10, and it's material, right? So if a human costs you, I don't know, $40 or $50 an hour in the United States, all in with technology and benefits and whatever, AI costs a tenth of that, less. And so the companies that are able to transition AI are going to have a lower cost base, and they can either use that money for marketing or to lower their price or to do whatever other things, right? AI is a deflationary force. And so the businesses that transition will have a huge structural advantage.
You've put your money where your mouth is. So your bet is there's going to be more and more voice, and you've leaned really heavily into voice apps. So what does it actually take behind the scenes to develop these voice agents that can handle voice interactions? What are you building from a technical perspective?
Before all of this, we had already done all the telephony pieces of it, right? Because we've had customers using our application for regular conversations over VoIP with humans. So that was already done for us. So a lot of the technology around voice AI or these AI agents is plugging into different LLM providers and building the builder on top of that, like the application that the customer can interface with to figure out like, what is the prompt? How could I actually orchestrate this qualification conversation? What actions do I need to be able to invoke, which the LLM can invoke, but then we have to build out all those like custom actions of transferring the call, ending the call, sending an SMS from it afterwards, updating a CRM. So we've had to build all of that stuff. That's like kind of the application layer I would describe. And then under the hood, there's lots of different choices now, and we have different bets spread across these. But there is the entire pipeline with all the relevant providers of how do you take something from speech to text back, or put it into the LLM, text back to speech, and solve for latency and interruption handling within that. And then dealing with like some of the new real-time models, which are not ready for prime time yet, but we're starting to invest in that as well. So it's both of that, like, I wouldn't call it the full infrastructure piece, right now, at least to the point of where we're at. We're not building our own LLMs. We are fine-tuning them for the use cases that we're doing. And then we're building that like layer on top, and then the application layer on top of that.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the fine-tuning piece. What is the context that you're giving the LLM? I know you talked about the journey builder, and so to some extent, that's the logic. When this happens, you should do Y, and when this happens, you should do Z.
I'll make one point before Rebecca starts, which is the biggest impact to customers is the death of pre-training. So the way this used to work with NLP and like other like old AI agents was, oh, you want to do an AI agent? Like $100,000 upfront and 50 grand a month in training fees. And you go, what? Like it was not real cost to use AI agents because that's how it worked. Sure, we've sort of used our data in the past to Rebecca's point, make sure that the AI agents are ready. And every now and again, we need to train it how to say a brand name that's not a proper word. But basically, there's no pre-training anymore, right? We can go live at zero implementation fee today with an AI agent for you that will do a thing. And Rebecca will explain how we then, without pre-training, give it the right context. But that is an enormous transition commercially the customers need to understand. If you went to somebody or you go to somebody today and they say 100 grand up front, hang up on them. Like those days are over.
Yeah. And then in terms of the pieces about like, you can get started instantly, and then how do you get better continuously over time, Bar, I think that, first of all, and I've seen other people say this as well, that there's still a lot of value in prompting in certain ways. And people are still learning the best ways to prompt certain models to get the best output. So us just even working with customers and building up a compendium of like, what are all the best practices for how do you prompt in these, we focus, I should have said, we focus on some core use cases in the contact center that we think AI agents perform really well, like qualification, collections, inbound triage. So that's one. We're not trying to boil the ocean. And then we're getting really good at how the prompting needs to work to be both conversational, but then also like complete the task that the agent's supposed to do. So there's a lot of benefit there.
Can you give a specific example, just because prompting better sounds high level, maybe something that works that you've seen a big improvement on?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of choices to be made around, do you do like a single prompt agent where you just literally put, I'm sure this is how you probably interact with ChatGPT, where you literally just say, please do this. You have these 5 things, do them in order. And is that going to be good enough? Like, is the AI agent going to be able to go from task 1 to task 2 to task 3? And if you try to take it off course and like give an objection, will it be able to go to the objection handling section and then jump back to the place in the task that it knows? There's different ways you could do that in like a single prompt. And then you could do other things where you say, actually, let's make it multi-prompt, where you're kind of combining code and LLM about when it should transition from one prompt or task to like another prompt, and it has no awareness of that other prompt. And is that the better way for the particular task you're trying to achieve? Because you don't want it to be able to go back, or it needs to be really deterministic that it gets to this next rule. I don't know if that's like sufficient in terms of an example, but those are some of the choices you have to make for a qualification use case, for example.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it's managing the state.
Yeah, it could be states. Like, how many states should you have? It should be a simple example is, how do you get a customer to engage? Should you announce that it's an AI? And if you do, how early on do you do it? And what language do you use to do that? Do you say, hey, I'm Rebecca, I'm an AI agent from such and such brand? Or do you say, I'm a virtual agent? Or do you first say, hey, I see you're calling from Buffalo and the Bills just won yesterday. Are you a fan? They say, yeah, I'm a huge fan and I'm excited for this conversation. It says, great. As an AI agent, I'm doing it, right? Like, how do you do those kinds of things to get the customer engaged into the conversation and not instantly start saying yes, no, yes, right? Because you want to make sure this isn't an IVR experience, but it's actual conversation experience. A lot of different ways to prompt around that. And it's not just prompting and iterating, it's also A/B testing those different solutions or options for customers. So that's one, I'd say. The second one we talked about was customer data, which I think that's where you were going, Barb. Like, we load it up with customer data, and then we prompt it to figure out when is it appropriate to use that customer data to be successful. So That's the benefit of the Regal platform. Like, we have all the customer data. Like, what were the last 5 conversations this customer already had with the contact center?
Yeah. Are they coming in pissed?
Are they coming in pissed? Exactly, what's their sentiment, and therefore, how should we treat them? So that's the customer data context. And then there's the custom voices or fine-tuning for industry-specific stuff, like industry-specific knowledge. Is it saying Geico correctly? Because that's not a normal word that an AI agent would know how to say. Or does it know how to have a certain part of a conversation well, and just like feeding it with a bunch of positive examples and negative examples? Those are kind of like the 3 tactics we take.
Got it. Yeah, and that's helpful because the levels of personalization are, hey, you're in Buffalo, but they could also be, hey, like I actually understand all the words that are relevant to this business, and we're going to fine tune the model to make sure that for this specific business, you know what it means, but it doesn't really matter for the home services business if you understand what Geico means.
Exactly.
If you had a magic wand, I'd be curious if you to land on the same answer of different ones, and you could make the underlying models better. It sounds like right now you're doing this conversion. You're not using the speech-to-speech models. What would you want out of the model that's missing today?
Yeah, the first one is the obvious one you just said, which is like the speech to speech being better. It's not that we're not. It's just like it's still early days for those models. I mean, they're in beta for a reason. They go down quite frequently for anyone who's used them. They're just not ready for prime time yet.
Yeah.
And the cost.
So part of it is just the reliability of those models.
Yeah. So the reliability of those and the cost to come down so that it actually becomes a viable option for many of the use cases that we have. That would be number one. And the promise of those models, which are it's not there yet, is that not only is it lower latent and you don't have that whole pipeline, but you should be able to detect emotion, right? Like AI agents are good and they can kind of say the right things, and like for words that are super obvious, they know the emotion and how to react. But as you know, like they can't mirror everything we're saying and exactly the like emotion that I'm emoting at any given moment. And throughout a call, it can change. They can't laugh if you're trying to make a joke. So I think those are some of the things from a qualitative experience that would be killer for our specific use cases if they could do those kinds of things.
I love it. So audio is moving so quickly, and it sounds like more reliable, lower latency, and then just better reasoning around how can I understand this emotion and then incorporate it into the type of response and the type of mirror that I can do.
There's other sort of use cases that are important, like that are not maybe the main use cases, but right now, if you go text to text, if there's 2 customers on the phone, let's say in healthcare, it's a mother and a child talking, the AI just gets text. It doesn't know that it's 2 different people, so there's no way for it to distinguish. Even in the voice-to-voice models, it still doesn't, do the work to distinguish necessarily who they are. But that's where this is going, where you can have multiple people in a conversation. That's important not just for that use case, but also for live transfers. In live transfers, it's a little bit easier because you know that you have the different channels. But still, when it's talking with multiple people, a lot of times AI will get confused. And it doesn't do a good job today. But that's an opportunity for, a use case where I go, hey, Rebecca, like I've got Bar here on the phone and we're all talking about what, like that is a real use case in contact center. So multi-person or multi-player mode is still very early. And then I think on latency, we're probably around sub 800 milliseconds. Maybe with the voice to voice, we're a little bit faster. You really need to be sub 500 milliseconds to make it feel like human. And some of that is also like, what everybody points out is like there are times where a human agent pauses, but then they might say, or give me a second, right? So
yeah, I was going to ask you if you use filler words today.
Yeah, figuring out that stuff is like, how do you make it so that if it's gonna pause, it goes, give me a second while it pauses, rather than just blank. And so, all of those things are gonna improve the quality of the experience.
So that's really helpful on the audio model front. So the last thing is also just being able to say, hey, my son is going to give this information to you and I'm going to bring it back to myself. What would you want on the data context side? So some of this is context that you get from better model, like what you just talked about. Can I understand if you're angry? Can I understand your mood and your tone? You have all this access to data context in Regal. If you could wave a magic wand and get more of that, what would you want that you don't have access to today?
I don't know. We have access to mostly what we need. Like I think the biggest problem with data is that companies don't have like one schema that they use to sort of identify it. So like if you're using Shopify, largely in Shopify there's set fields and you can sort of know what fields are happening. But when we work with bigger customers who have custom CRMs, or even they might use the same CRM, but they've labeled the field event 1 customer does something, or event 2, and you're like, what is event 1? Event 1 option A, event 1 option B, and they've even forgotten what each event is.
I mean, anyone who's worked in data, it's like, oh yeah, feel that pain.
The good news is the advantage we have is that's true for the data that they bring into Regal and like our automated systems can make sense of. But we already had that problem for the human agent. It was like, I'm on this call. So we've have in our product ways for brands to curate what they believe is the most important events or the most important like attributes of the contact or the customer for the benefit of the UI of their human agents anyway. So I feel like a lot of that data cleaning by nature of having to have done it for humans has already been done, probably in a way that's like more than necessary for what an LLM could handle. So that hasn't really been like a limitation for us. I was trying to think, what data sources do we wish we had access to that we don't?
Yeah, we usually get access to pretty much everything.
Yeah, we have a lot of channels in our platforms.
We have big healthcare customers, big financial services customers where we're getting all that. I think the challenge is sort of something else, which is kind of like in product and marketing works, people for 10, 20 years have had tools that allow you to use data for personalization, allow A/B testing. It's become part of what everybody does. In the contact center for 20 years, they've been beaten on the head and told, your product can't do anything. Don't ask for anything. Like, you're a cost center. And so they stopped asking. And I think finally we're getting a new generation of people in the contact center that have used product tools, used marketing tools, and go, gosh, like, I'm so excited to have Regal because I can now do in the contact center the things I did in product and marketing work and use data for customizing the interaction. I can do A/B testing, and they're excited. But if you don't have people who are excited to do that, and everyone's going, no, just like treat everyone the same and don't touch it. It doesn't matter how much data you have, like it's not going to improve the experience. So some of this is just also we think about how do you build a culture of continuous improvement, a culture of learning inside an organization that for years has been told, don't break anything. Like that's a very important cultural shift.
How do you think someone can do that?
Yeah, I mean, I go back and I talk to some of the original founders of like Eloqua and some of the early marketing automation companies, and they were like, look, it was 10 years of education. It's not like people got it in marketing at the beginning. Like people used in marketing just either say, oh, hey, customer service team, can you email some people? Or let's just take an email list and, blast everybody like the same, like that's how it worked. It's years of education. And so now we're the benefits of that. I think education is the place to start. So we do a lot of, work in conferences and with our partners and with customers on educating them. But yeah, when like I said before, when we get an org where the new head of the contact center didn't come from 30 years in one of the old school techs, but they came from 5 years using marketing automation technology, or one of our customers, the head of marketing was just put in charge of not just marketing and product, but also the contact center. That's forward thinking. Right? She's now coming to me and going, hey, Alex, like what, like our contact center is just like calling people 15 times with the same exact thing. How do we do this better? She has asked the question. Like, so having a marketer or a customer facing person on top of all the teams leads to that change internally.
Yeah. And you talk a lot about contact centers as cost versus like revenue generating. And so I think that to your point, if you have someone who's marketing minded and product minded, they're thinking, how can we turn these opportunities? How can we turn some of these into leads?
Yeah. The other persona of leader we've seen is like a biz ops leader. Like even if the brand does generally have a sense of contact center is a bit more operational and cost related, if it's a biz ops leader who's been put in charge, they're going to think data driven, right? They may not yet have the customer mindset and we help educate that, but they're very much about like process improvement, data driven. How do I automate things and A/B test? That's a good persona for us as well.
Got it. When folks are starting, you said that you think that the ratio is going to flip, and right now they're pretty early in incorporating AI agents into these contact centers. How are they evaluating the effectiveness? I'm sure that there are the standard CSAT, NPS, the standard things that they care about. Is there anything different when they bring AI into the equation that they look at?
No, really what you think. So, I'd say everybody today in very rapid order went from, oh, AI is a future thing to like by December going, oh my God, I have to have this in my 2025 plan. So like that happened very fast. I think everyone is evaluating multiple providers because it's not just like they're different providers. There's different strategies of how people do this. So people are figuring out, do I care more about text, more about voice? Do I want a developer platform? Do I want somebody that does it for me? What kind of pricing do I want? So there are different flavors that people are picking. We've won today, I think 75% of the AI deals we've been in. So the flavor we are selling seems to be working, which is good. And I think some other players have made some like really critical mistakes in what they've sold, and so like they'll fix it eventually as they realize and lose deals. But from there, like people are looking at a metric that's in one of three. Either I care about a revenue metric, I care about a cost saving metric, or I care about a CSAT metric. In contact centers, that's usually where it is. By and large, I think what people are expecting is like, I know my costs will come down. Can I make sure that the whatever revenue I generate from this, or whatever CSAT I generate from this, or whatever resolution I get, if it's like contact center support interaction, doesn't get worse? And I think at the beginning, people were expecting the trade-off would be, look, I know cost is lower, but the quality will be lower too. We haven't seen that. What we've seen is, there's an inbound lead qualification call. The AI is just as good as a human. There's a support interaction. The AI is just as good as a human on resolution, CSAT, all of that, just at a fraction of the cost. And that's what's gotten people really jazzed, is there's not the negative trade-off that they expected.
It makes sense. And, one of the things we talked about is also the transition path, or the kind of the spectrum from AI assist with folks at the contact center to like full autonomy, full AI in production. And I think that the examples that I had described in LLM land are quite different from voice, because you can't really parallelize and look at, or feel free to push back on me if you see people looking at real-time transcripts and 6 of them at the same time. I don't think you can do that. Like, the latency is too tough. You have to interrupt. So what is the biggest challenge in actually deploying and building the voice agents, if we go back to that?
I'd say right now the sticking point is going from tests to bigger production. There's not like in the contact center, there's a pretty well understood set of metrics that you're looking at. And we show people that for AI agents too. But despite that, people are still nervous about taking it from, hey, 10% of my calls to 20% to 30% to 40%, because it's so early. No one knows what's going to break, what's going to go wrong, And so I think that's the phase, not just us, most of the AI voice providers are in, or, okay, like this is now being tested, but how do I take it from a successful test to 80%? The majority of this use case is being done via voice. For some use cases that are very low CSAT to start with, even with humans, like a collections call or like a an operations call, like sure, they don't care. I can just do it. But I was on the phone with a very large automotive company today, and they're going, "Well, we know these calls are very important because we sell cars on them. Like, what happens if one goes wrong? Like, that's a material hit, so they're more sensitive to it."
How about on the actual development side for you guys? What's the biggest challenge?
Yeah, I would have said, and this is not like necessarily actually, it is a bit of a technical challenge, but I think it's testability of AI agents, especially in voice, because it's not just like, is the logic correct, but also does it sound good? And is it saying the thing in the right way and all of that? So the ability to make changes to AI agents with confidence and then kind of run them through a set of regression tests that you feel comfortable, like, okay, like I can launch this in production. Like this is going to go well. Of course, like the higher your risk appetite, you can just rely on conversation intelligence and like put it in production at some percent and just like see and adjust from there. But if you want to be rapidly iterating and trying new concepts and then putting them live and A/B testing them, like AI agents, like unlike code, like one area of the prompt, and goes back to the benefit of like multiple states, like one area of the prompt or some change you made, like you may not realize affects a different thing that you thought it was already able to do. So I think a solution around like large scale testing and feeling confident that I can put something in production, that's where we're spending a lot of time.
How are you doing that today, even if it's imperfect and not in its final state?
Yeah, I mean, there's different pieces. I combined the whole like problem of like there's few shot testing or like low volume testing of just like, I made a change. Can I type to it a little bit, a couple of different scenarios and just like make sure I feel good about the way that it kind of navigates that conversation and then do a couple of calls. So we have that kind of testing capability. I'd say the next one that we're building out is we have a little bit of, I would also say unit testing around function calling. So like a very common use case is scheduling. And you'd be surprised if you haven't experienced it, how bad LLMs are at scheduling.
I mean, humans are bad at scheduling.
Humans are bad at scheduling. LLMs are terrible at scheduling because they pretend like they know scheduling. So, oh yeah, today's the 25th. That means tomorrow's the 30th. How? Um, so we did a lot of work to make scheduling like really good. And the work was around what are all the different variants of the ways that people talk about dates? Oh, can you do this on the 10th? Oh, tomorrow at 3 works. Oh, PST on Feb 8th. Like lots of different ways people talk about dates and times. And so we built a really great like scheduling function for that. And so those are cases where we can use unit testing to like make sure all the old ways of saying dates still work, even if the customer like changes how the LLM kind of calls that function. But the third problem is the one I was talking about, which is like in development. It's not live yet, which is like almost if you think about it as like, how do I create different scenarios of customers and different personas and like role play like conversations through the AI agent and then see what all the results would have been. Does it pass my compliance criteria? Does it pass my friendliness criteria? Does it pass my like it finished the qualification task in the right order and all the different permutations? That's the like solution we're focused on now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think there's a lot of demand for can you simulate different populations? Can you understand how they'll react to different situations? And so there's like a diversity of agents that you can deploy, but also end customers at the end of the day that maybe you're moving into a new city and you want to simulate that beforehand too. I think there's a lot you can do there.
Yeah, and we're trying to make it as rooted in real customer. We have this advantage of having had tons of real customer and human agent conversations in our application, and we're trying to make sure that that testing solution is rooted in being able to say like, go run all these like historic calls through this, like see what it outputs.
And the next step, in marketing, they often talk about A/B testing and a human going in and like trying two variants. And there's some marketing products now that use AI to decide on the like which A/B things to test. In sort of LLMs or sort of AI agents, there's the concept of reinforcement learning, where I think of it kind of like evolution. It's creative destruction. AI randomly does something, and then there's a question: is it better or is it worse? Now, we have intentionally not put that into production because it'd be very scary to have an AI agent deciding what tests it wants to do on the accent it uses or the language it uses or what it says or what offer it uses. But I think as we can get really good about constraining guardrails on the tests that the AI is effectively doing, you start seeing the potential for self-optimization in these use cases way beyond what a human is able to do. And so I think that's, for me, one of the more exciting parts of this is like you see it with contact center agents. Like there's always the bottom 10% that never get it, the middle that kind of do it. The top 10% are the ones that see the script, understand it, internalize it, and then figure out how to make it better on their own or are doing things you didn't even teach them to do. And they're just great at it. And if you could have 100 AI agents that were like that, like you'd be in heaven, right? And so that's to some extent, part of this is how do you get to a place where these AI agents self-optimize?
I love that. Well, I'm curious what you think in the long term, because earlier you gave a sort of hot take, which is this AI assisted customer contact centers are not going to be around and it's going to be a lot of just AI automation. And so what do you think the future of this looks like? Where do the humans interplay? Where does the AI interplay?
Yeah, what I've been saying to people is there will be humans in the future of contact center. There will be P&L owners that decide, what to do. There will be prompt engineers. There will be managers, but there will not be tier one agents. Like that will disappear, right? In the same way, you don't have somebody like, I don't know, driving a car in 30 years because they're going to be driverless cars. It's just going to change. And like, we should just accept that that's going to change. It may take time, but it'll shift. To your point at the beginning, people often, hear me say that and they sort of wonder like what that means. Well, first, you should be really excited as a consumer because AI is a deflationary force. It'll lower the cost of companies, lower the cost of goods. You as a consumer will get access to things you couldn't buy before because they were too expensive. You'll get access to, think about like the best chef in the world. You can now have at home because AI can just do it. It's a different industry, but or the best experience for contact centers that maybe they only gave to the richest billionaires in the past. Now you'll be able to have. So it's a massively positive force for consumers, and it is massively a force of efficiency. But that's true of the washing machine. That's true of internet. That's true of a mobile phone. If I think about what my parents did when they went to work, they didn't like know something and they wanted to look it up. They got on a bike and they went to the library and they pulled out a book. Now in 3 seconds I know the answer, or I ask AI what the answer is. So the efficiency in the workforce will be drastic, and it'll create a whole new set of jobs. And all of a sudden, people will be employed in a different way. So I'm not worried about the job creation. Like if you look at the history of this, like we've done a very good job of creating jobs and using the efficiency to drive GDP up. So generally, but a positive impact. But yeah, I don't think anybody is planning for a future as a professional, contact center employee in 10 years. Like that's going to go away.
How much do you think the set of constraints will be human defined versus agent defined in the long term?
I think, what'll happen, I was talking with one of the big storage companies in the United States just earlier, and they have, I think, I can't remember the exact number, one manager for every 10 agents. And, that's their current, it'll change. Now with AI, they'll have two or three managers for every 10 agents. So there'll be more humans that are involved in thinking about like, what was that customer experience? How do we make, because all of a sudden you'll have the money to do it. You'll have the money to invest in innovation and improving instead of just rote, like memorizing and doing the same thing for everybody. So I do think there'll still be a lot of humans doing that stuff. To your point on reinforcement learning, look, I'm excited and I'm waiting to be impressed. I've yet to see a demo that shows me anything particularly interesting for this use case. But maybe in a year we'll come back here and I'll go, oh my God, it blew my mind how great it is, and like we'll really be using it. I don't know. The line that one of my friends at OpenAI likes to use is the only thing that's going to stop this AI train is regulation. And so in the next 4 years, we could be pretty comfortable that the new president is not going to be a favor of regulation and is just going to let this run unchecked. So for 4 years, there'll be a lot of opportunity. After that, I don't know. Maybe regulation will slow it down. But short of regulation stopping this, it's going to be amazing what happens.
What would you do if you were working at a contact center today, given that, your belief is that in 10 years, there's almost this inevitable, more AI-centric role, and then there will be other roles for humans in the contact center? How would you train up?
Yeah, become a manager. If you're a manager, like that job is going to be really valuable. Like if you're a good coach, and like I was on a call the other day with somebody in life insurance, and he heard like we made a demo AI agent for him, and he was like writing down furiously 10 things. He's like, I have these 10 pieces. Like that person is so valuable because they are going to give that AI agent all that feedback. The AI agent is instantly do it, and then he's going to have 10 more. Like that manager, super valuable. But yeah, the person that really wants to be an actor or an artist and is doing this on the side to earn some bucks, they'll be an influencer instead, or they'll take a job doing something else. But this won't be the hourly job they do 9 to 5 to make a little money on the side.
So thank you. We started with that I met you guys and saw that you two spent a lot of time together. But this was at the very beginning of Regal. A lot has changed since then, both on the AI front and on the traction that you all have gotten for your great product. So how have you changed as leaders and people since starting Regal?
Oh my God.
No pressure.
Someone told me this is a good thing the other day, but I'll just say it. Like, I am a begrudging leader. I have always been. I don't know, but it's a good thing. Like, if I could be an IC but still get the same amount of leverage and productivity that I get, I would do it. That's not because I don't like people, but I love the work and I love doing what we do to deliver value for our customers. And so if I could participate in that as much as possible and stay close to what our team is doing, it just makes me really happy. So that's something that hasn't changed. I started with the thing that hasn't changed about me. I think the thing that has changed about me as a leader is opening up my world beyond product. Like I've been spending much more time with our customers directly, engaged in sales deals, trying to be more external facing. It's not my personality, but with like marketing and blog posting and things like that. So I think trying to like evangelize as much as possible the story and the transition that Regal is bringing to organizations and to the end consumer experience that we're creating, and building more of that leadership capacity, less about the individual work that I love to do as part of the company. But I think those are the places that I've kind of changed the most and participated the most in recently.
Love it. How about you, Alex?
I mean, to Rebecca's point, Rebecca knows this about me. Like, I'd love one day there'd be a company of like 2 employees doing $1 billion of revenue. Like, I think to Rebecca's point, we both like the work and learning and digging into it. And like, that's why we're in this. And, I think where we find people that are like-minded and like-hearted, it's exciting for us because we see them have the same excitement and love and learning, and we learn from them. And so I heard that the other day, actually, Coinbase, I think it's Coinbase, that when they interview people afterwards on their like post-interview form, the big question is like, do you think you would learn something from this person? And like, would it make you happier to come into work that this person is there?
I love that. I had not heard that.
Yeah, it's such a smart way to look at it. It's not just evaluating them now with their current skill. Like, I don't know, that's just a point in time. Evaluate if this person is really going to be transformative to help you learn and help the company learn. So something I think, we're trying to do better even in that area. But yeah, so I haven't changed on that access. I think, the access that really changes for me is, just I think how much of my time I spend into like change management inside of an organization. I at the beginning when you're like two people, like you go, "Hey, Rekka, let's do this," and like you change, and tomorrow you're doing it. We're not a huge company, but I just appreciate much more like how much time that takes in planning. And I look back at like the companies and the jobs I've had in the past where it's been done well or done badly, and appreciate much more now the difficulty of like change management in organizations. So, we went from selling largely a CCaaS product in the marketplace to selling AI. You can go ask employees, like, did Rebecca and I do a good job or bad job of that? And like, how well are we doing at making sure people understand what the vision is of the company and where we're going, such that when they're making decisions day to day, it fits into that.
And they stay excited about that vision.
Yeah, and I still have huge amounts of work to go on that, but I appreciate more and more the leaders of big companies that are able to make those transitions seamlessly.
I love it. Well, thank you both so much for coming on. Great to see you as always, and next time in New York.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, Bar.